Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 11th episode of Cardboard Time. My name is Arwen.
This is Justin. Maybe some point we'll stop counting.
Someday. I'm still excited. You know,
you're excited
we're
about...
still low.
Yeah,
we're still low.
It's good to be excited about each and every episode.
You know, once we hit like 27 or 28, then it'll be like...
Those are boring numbers.
Yeah, exactly. We're still in the little kid kind of phase where you get birthdays every single day or every single time.
Good analogy. Yes, 11 is still a good birthday. 27 is like, I forgot my birthday.
I think you get birthdays until you're like 18, and then you celebrate 21, and then I think it's like it's
just downhill.
10. Yeah. And you don't really celebrate it. It's more just kind of lamenting it.
Yeah, I have legit forgotten at least 2 of my birthdays.
Yeah, it's getting more frequent. This year for me will not be a forgotten one because, well, I'm getting old. We actually got to see each other in person. That was exciting.
That's true.
We got to meet each other for lunch.
Good recommendation. I don't remember the name of the place. I could find it on a map.
Banter in Cleveland.
Yeah, lots of awesome food selections.
They have the world's probably best fried cheese curds, at least that I've had, and I've had a lot of fried cheese curds in my time.
Cheese curds and poutine.
And poutine, yes.
And I got myself some stuff at the sushi place next door as well.
How was the sushi? I didn't try it because I'm not a
always
sushi
good.
girl.
Actually, it's fantastic. But I went for a cabbage pancake thing. I never had that before. That was fantastic. It's like, of course, you hate cabbage, but it was like breakfast food with cabbage and noodles. It's like, oh, this is awesome. So it was delish.
That sounds pretty good. I know Allie got some sushi. She said that she enjoyed it quite a bit. I got the Nashville hot chicken poutine, which was very good, but it just wasn't the original that they have there. Is so incredibly good. That's pretty much what I'm going to get there unless I see a special from now on. You did get to try the, what was it, mild mushroom or something?
Forest mushroom or something poutine. I'm a sucker for anything that has mushrooms in it. That was my go-to. I probably will try the base one next time we go up just to compare because, we are poutine aficionados. So.
We are. We do like our poutine.
In lieu of beer of the day, let's talk about poutine.
Let's talk about poutine and food of the day. I do have a beer of the day. It is the Ballad of the Peanut Butter Pony by Illuminated Brew Works, and that's quite a long title for
beautiful.
A beer. It was very upbeat and engaging at first, and then had a very sad, tearful ending.
Oh,
actually, it was the other way around. I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't too terribly impressed with it to begin with. It's advertising peanut butter right in the name. So when I didn't have any peanut butter on the front end, I was a little bit disappointed. And it all came on the back end. And once it hit, it was really good.
It
just took
like
a while.
Good thing, though. Is it like peanut butter sediment in the bottom? Do you get a little syrupy?
No, sadly not, because I could get into that too.
All right, that is not
weird as
my
that
bag.
sounds.
Yeah, you are.
But it's a Imperial Stout out of Chicago. I gave it a 4. I originally gave it a 4.25, and then I backed off a little bit. I think it's deserving of the 4. I do like it a little bit better than the Sweet Baby Jesus, but it is harder to find. So, when you're wanting that peanut butter in a pinch, the Sweet Baby Jesus is fine. But I would definitely recommend trying this one out. It was pretty good.
I will point out that a 4 is high for both of us. Like, we reserve the 4.25 to 5s for just those rare, exceptional ones. Somehow we were kind of equally calibrated on that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of funny. Everything for me is between like 3 and 4. It's not a very good system, I suppose, unless it's garbage.
Unless you go down to Peru and have a few of those beers. Some of them were close to that 4 range, but a lot of them were down in the sub 3 category, which we don't talk about.
I often feel bad when I'm giving a sub 3 rating, especially if I'm at the establishment. I'm like, oh no, what if they see this?
You know what the really bad one is when you're at the establishment and we both actually use Untapped. You're at the establishment and they have the Untapped rating that's right there on the monitor. So they're saying, hey, Arwen drank, such and such a beer, and she thought it was absolutely terrible and gave it a 1.25.
It's like when you have that terrible teacher in college, but you just can't give them that bad rating. You're like, yeah, they're okay, I guess.
They're all right. I mean, they're mediocre. They're like a 3.
We're just too nice. That's our problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we're saying that after our reviews today.
Yeah, here we are. We're supposed to be reviewers, and everything's like, everything's okay. Everything's okay, guys.
Everything's fine,
Buy
guys.
all the games.
Yeah.
Buy all the games. At least you've learned to be brutal there, right?
I've learned to be a little bit better. Yeah.
All right. Well, I do have a beer to share because, again, I'm going on the no IPA kick, seeing if I can relive some of those golden years where normal beers had flavor. And I picked up the Guinness Baltimore Blonde, which is new to me, I guess. I don't know if it's new. And, wasn't too shabby. Pretty good flavor. I think for the price point, I would stick with something microbrew over it, but it was not bad. And the rating was probably somewhere in the 3.25 to 3.5 range because everything I rate is there.
Okay. So it was average. It was a decent beer.
I would drink it again.
So I have to ask, because you've been doing kind of this IPA purge in your life, have you noticed any sort of different ability to pick up on flavors or anything like that?
I'm kind of wishing, I wonder if I should try to set a baseline. This is a hard thing to do experimentally. Flavor is a tough thing. Mm-hmm. It's like when I review those teas, I had to drink all 5 of them back to back, and I can't do a taste test now, and then I don't know how to run that experiment. It's too ephemeral.
Yeah.
Whatever that word is.
Ephemeral?
That's probably it.
Yeah,
although
something
I
like
don't always trust your Buffalo pronunciations of words.
They are weird.
They are weird.
Well, let's actually talk about some board games. We always update my shelf of shame. It's at 185.
That is one less, if I recall.
That is one less.
Wow, a whole one less.
Someday. A whole one less.
Someday when we both are moving into the nursing home.
We'll get that final game of Twilight Imperium, first edition off the shelf, and wrangle up some senile old residents that don't know what's going on.
And then you'll have to sell all your games because you won't have a house to put them in.
No, 185 is one less. I did make that Excel graph that is available upon request.
I saw it. It's very flat.
It is very flat. It's horribly flat. I need to play more games. New editions are at 0.
I see a technicality here.
Allie did get Arch Ravels, but
but you're going to blame her on that one.
No, it's her game. Okay. So she backed the Kickstarter. She picked it out. It's not that I gave the okay, it's just that I went in and kind of reviewed, what's this like? What does the campaign look like? Does this look legit? That kind of thing. Just going through the components in that, they did a really nice job. So I'm interested to see the gameplay and what everything is going to look like out on the table.
So you're not going to include it in your unplayed games count, but you're sure going to review it when you get to it.
Well, absolutely. It's material.
Yeah, okay.
It's not my unplayed game. It's Allie's unplayed game. There's a difference.
It's in your household.
It's like when I buy a game for her and then I just say, well, you know what? It's not an unplayed game for me because it's technically Ellie's game. I gave it to her, so it's not on my shelf.
Wasn't there that scene in Shawshank Redemption when he taught the guy how to gift things to his wife so he didn't get taxed on it? It's feeling a lot like that.
I don't blame me, blame the system. That's the way that it works.
It's your system.
I could change it, but I won't.
I don't make the rules, but I do.
Yes, exactly. So that one game that I did play was Escape Zombie City, and I got a solo mode out to the table, and I am going to go and break one of my own rules.
But you don't make these rules, so,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I played a solo variant, and I'm going to judge based on the solo variant. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because Escape Zombie City is very, very close to regular Escape. Curse of the Temple is the sub-name of the first regular Escape.
Do I know this game?
I thought you played it before. It's a real-time dice game.
Oh, no, you told me about it, and I was excited. It's got a
And
little
you
timer
haven't played.
kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about now. I just hear about games. I don't get to play them.
I'm going to do a real quick review of this for you. Escape Curse of the Temple is a dice rolling game where you go, you roll dice, you're trying to find the exit, you accumulate a bunch of gems, and 3 times during the middle of the game, you go to the center, avoid getting locked in. If you make it out within 10 minutes, you win. Zombie City adds to that by going and trying to find all these different items, adding zombies that you have to defeat on your way that kind of impede your progress. And then once you get everything collected, you have to get into a van and drive to the exit. It really seemed like Escape Zombie City was like Curse of the Temple, but with extra steps. The game itself was fine, but there's no reason to own both.
So it's out.
Yeah, to me, there's no reason that you need the same game with extra steps.
It's not bad. It's just you have an almost equivalent game.
In reality, I pretty much have the same game. So
and regular Escape comes out on top because it's
easier to teach, get out to the table, just as much fun. I don't need that shelf space being taken up by essentially what winds up being the same thing. So it's out.
It's gone.
So a game that I also played that is not new to my collection is Eon's End, which is
that one.
You have played it. It's a deck builder. I introduced some new friends to it, so some people who hadn't played, we decided to get that out on Tabletop Simulator because I knew how to play it, knew how to teach it. I always have a really good time with it. I always find that there's a lot of replayability with the different characters that you can pull out, different spells that come out that you can buy. It always seems to be a different game each time. So a lot of replayability. It is a very difficult game, though. It's cooperative.
I recall that the difficulty was high. Now, I got to say that it being a deck builder, which I generally love, I don't recall enjoying it that much. But I don't know. Everybody else had a good time, so maybe I need to replay it. I did not play this recent play. I'm talking from near 2 years ago when I believe we played it at one of our last conventions together.
Do you remember why you didn't like it at all?
No, I don't. That's just it. Other than maybe the group. So
it could be. It's something that's always hit for me. And again, we don't always have to agree on those games.
No, but we generally do.
We generally do. So that was kind of an odd one out.
Yeah, well, it apparently means I need to give it another go. It has been some time.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
So, on to what we've been playing. Spicy from 2020. So, pretty recent game. I think I remember seeing this out. I don't know if you got it off a Kickstarter, but
Nope, just regular purchase.
Okay. I wonder where I had seen it. It's very flashy. I'm getting ahead of the review, aren't I? So this is a 2 to 6 player game. Runs 15 to 20 minutes. It is very quick. Designed by Giori Zoltan Gabor and published by Heidelbar Games. So, hear me out. Players play as cats that have become exhausted fighting with each other and decide to settle their dispute with a hot spice eating contest. So, the game is a bluffing game. Players are trying to score points by getting rid of their cards, which are spices, and calling out higher and higher cards, because you're always going to have a higher spice than the previous player, right? Whether or not your card actually is that, played face down, right? So basically you have to follow a spice suit with higher and higher numbers, hotter and hotter spices, and the players have to guess if you're bluffing or not. And then either the winner is whoever gets rid of their hand twice, or the cat with the most points, meaning you get points anytime you call a bluff appropriately or were not bluffing when you were called. All right. So what do you think?
I want to start off by saying that I loved the presentation of this game. So everything from the shiny backs on the cards, which are very, very visually appealing. The front of the box, like you said, is very eye-catching because it's literally like the foil kind of not coating, but
foil embossed.
That foil embossing.
It's gorgeous looking. That's why I think I remember seeing it out somewhere.
And the artwork is fantastic.
Oh,
I mean, it's that, I think, Japanese Japanese aesthetic. And I love the little details, like you have your 3 spices, you have cats that are eating the spices, and as the spices progressively get hotter, the art reflects that.
Yeah, cats are spitting more flames and whatnot. Yeah, it's good because there's unique art on almost all the cards. It's pretty slick.
So presentation-wise, I thought it was great. I wasn't too terribly impressed with the game, and I haven't quite nailed down exactly why that is. I think for a bluffing game, it's okay, but I also think that there's too many cards to kind of keep track of bluffs. So you have all these cards that people are playing in sequence, and there's just too many of them to try to keep track. Okay, well, Justin played the 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I know that these are the ones that are left out there. Yeah. There's like 3 sets of each, I think. So it's really tough.
If it was a single deck, but there's 3 of every card, roughly like that. I absolutely agree. Unless you were counting cards, there's no way you could call a bluff with any real confidence. So it comes down to pure guessing. That's what I think the problem is.
Pure guessing and maybe some timing.
Well, or social cues then. Cues from the other player, but not, a game mechanic.
Which we didn't have because we were playing it online, which brings me to my second point.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was missing the in-person aspect.
Most likely.
And the fact that you can't really tell the hesitation that somebody's got to draw a card, or those little kind of nonverbal cues that somebody is kind of hesitating or trying to pull a fast one. Mm-hmm. Reading your opponent, you can't do online, which makes that very tough.
Even though we were, on audio. Mm-hmm. But again, like I think I could play off my pauses and uncertainty way better not being in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also like the fact that you have some game variant cards that are also included, kind of change that gameplay up a little bit, make some different small subtle changes to the game. I do like that for replayability.
We did not test those though, or did
we? Have not. No.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe they improved the game. I don't even think I took a look to see what kind of changes they made. If I recall, they had a lot of like symbols on them that fit the theme of the game, and they probably make perfect sense once I, was introduced to them, but I didn't try to interpret it while we were playing.
Yeah, I don't think it would be that hard to introduce them once you knew what was going on with the base game.
Yeah.
But I just never got the feeling that I wanted to introduce them.
That was me too. I was ready for that game to be done. I gotta admit, I was just like, no, this is over. I don't even care what these cards add. I could be not being fair by, just throwing it out the window that quick, but I didn't even bother to figure out what those extra cards were doing.
Yeah. So. And I think we can pretty much go and give our final judgment right now on it. We've kind of exhausted the game as... it's very simple.
Yeah, for me, it was just pure guessing, and that is definitely not my thing. I would make the comparison that if I want a bluffing game, I'd probably play some sort of werewolf game or something where there's tons of those out there and have way more fun.
And I'm going to agree with that. I am keeping this around until I'm able to play it in person. I think that it would be one of those games you could bring out at a convention for a filler, teach fairly easily, and see if it works a little bit better than the online implementation that we played.
Well, plus it's gorgeous. It is very pretty. And I like goofy themes. Maybe it didn't seem that way when I was given the description, but I like goofy themes if they do it well. And this was done well. It's just the mechanics aren't there to back it up.
And I don't know, getting back to your point on you would rather play something else, I don't know when I'd rather play this than a game like Skull, which seems very similar and has very similar concepts, but it just seems to flow so much better.
Yep. I remember only calling people just to make sure they didn't win. Like, their hand's light, yep. I'm going to call them. And I might be right, I might be wrong. And that was it. I had no agency in it.
I'm only keeping it to play it in person to kind of validate the fact that we're right about it, essentially.
Yeah, to make sure we gave it a fair shake. At least it doesn't take up much space.
It doesn't. Very small box. So Yeah, I don't mind having it around for a little bit longer, but we will be revisiting this one once we get back out into in-person gaming and having, those sessions again. And it's probably going to be one of the first ones on my list because I'd like to either say there's something that we missed here and we're going to be sorry that we did, or just get it out of the collection and go on to the next one.
I'd say it's hanging by a thread.
I would agree. And that was spicy. So I want to talk about Res Arcana from 2019.
So I guess it's been out a while. It just seems like I'm suddenly hearing a whole lot about it. Like, not just from you.
I think a lot of that has been a little bit of a resurgence because of the board game arena adaptation of it.
Okay. So that's kind of new.
They recently released it on Board Game Arena, so anytime you have a game like that, especially with socially distanced gaming, still being a thing, it's going to drive a lot of interest of people who are saying, I think I remember that, and I didn't pick it up at the time for whatever reason. Maybe I should go check it out and see. I mean, that was one of the reasons that I kind of got into it.
Well, that's a good assessment. That's probably accurate. So it's new to a bunch of people because now they suddenly have access to it.
They can finally play it. 2 to 4 players. 20 to 60 minutes, depending on the player count. Designed by Thomas Lehman and published by Sandcastle Games. And in Res Arcana, rival mages are going to race to 10 points in a tableau and engine building game. Players use cards to get resources, which are then used to construct artifacts, acquire places of power, and ancient monuments. Everything that is placed in a player's tableau has some sort of ability, point scoring opportunity, or both. So just building up your tableau, trying to build up abilities that are going to synergize really well with each other, and then race to 10 points. Very simple concept, but not such a simple game.
No, definitely not. It was very weighty, very heavy, I'd say. I would not play it with AP prone people. You're borderline. You have greatly improved over the last year or two.
I've tried.
That said, it's a really cool game. I like the theme. It's just, now, you tell me, maybe there is some story built into it, but I didn't get it on just the playthrough.
Not enough to care about, apparently, because I don't know what it is.
Maybe something was in the rule book. That said, though, I don't care because it worked on its own. It just seemed like a dark, high fantasy, you're a wizard building up your magic components and relics and whatnot. It works. It was really cool. Good looking components. Again, real heavy. It had a slow start and then a quick finish. And that's often a gripe with me. I just don't know how to get around it sometimes, but it just frustrates me when I'm building my engine and then it's over.
So I will say that when I was describing the game to you, I told you that it was going to be between 4 and 6 turns. And after the first couple turns, you're like, you are full of it because there's no way that you're going to, wind up being done even by 6 turns. I think it took me 5 to win.
Yeah. It's at 2 or 3 turns, I was like, I have only just begun building my resource engine. You too, you weren't really ahead of me. And I'm like, no, this is going to go on like 10 rounds. And then boom, like 2 more rounds and it's over. You know what? I want to say I didn't like that, but I guess it works and it was all right. What I really see this doing is kind of like Magic the Gathering or something, although I'd hate to compare the two because it's a totally different game. But I could just see you sitting down with someone and playing multiple rounds and just going through that. So yeah, it might seem real quick, but I'd sit down and especially head to head, and I would play like 3 rounds of it because it goes quick and then you're going to be like, yeah, I want another. So it was quite satisfying. I potentially see a lot of replayability in it, but since I didn't have the physical game, I don't know how many extra cards there are, right? If they're like, so you had places of power, you had monuments. Were there more decks of each of these? So each time you do the layout, you get a different kind of assortment?
There are different mages. There are different artifacts.
Artifacts are your starting hand.
Yes. There's 40 artifacts in total, I believe, that come with the starting game.
Okay.
The places of power are double-sided, so you have a starting kind of configuration, the easiest concepts to basically introduce people to the game. And then you have the monuments that are the same, but you only display 2 at a time, and you can pull off the draw pile.
It'd be hard to get through that whole deck in one game, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think there's like 10 monuments that come up, and you never know the order in which they're going to come up.
So I gotta admit, that seems a bit limited.
It's one of the things that I'm kind of wondering is the replayability of the game in the long term. So I'm not talking 5, 10 games. I'm talking down the road, like 30, 40 games. You start to kind of hit a limit.
Where you're starting to feel like the same thing has happened again, perhaps. It being a heavy game, I like playing it on BGA because the card tips, the hover tips and stuff, were so handy for me to figure out what the heck was going on. Because it's complex. I think, though, the one thing I couldn't do is keep track of you very well. So you were on the screen, but I'd have to scroll down and all that, right? I wasn't spending enough time watching you, which is part of the reason you just rolled right over me, but I don't think that was the whole story. I think it was going to happen anyway. So it might be good to get in person. I think I would practice on BGA if I were new to this game, as I am. I would practice there, and then once I was comfortable with how all the mechanics worked, I would switch to in-person because I think it looks like a really awesome game, good components, and I think it'd be nice to be head-to-head on that.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with your assessment. It's a very cool game. It is weighty in getting new players to the table. Once you know what you're doing, it flies. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, this is also not for light gamers.
No, because you're going to be sitting there wondering, oh my God, what are all these symbols? This game is insanely symbol heavy. Just a ton of symbols. Again, once you know what they do, it's great. I mean, you can read a card and very easily discern this is what this is going to do without any questions.
And BGA is a great way to learn that.
BGA is a fantastic way to learn that. So you see the symbols on the cards themselves as you're playing, but BGA does give a more detailed description. The symbology is really good, but there is a learning curve to it. The small random deck seemed really strange at first. I thought that was bizarre because I think you get like 8 or 9 cards and you have to make your best combo out of that between that and the monuments that come up and the places of power. So that's what you get. You start off with 3 cards in your hand and you have to make the best of what you get.
I thought that was weird mechanic. It was hard to wrap my head around until I played it, because I'm expecting like a deck builder where everybody gets a pretty similar starting hand, but instead you just get a random smattering of things and you're going to do what you can with it. And then I'm also expecting to build my deck and hand up, and nope, that's not how it works. You don't buy more cards to your hand. You just try to cycle through them and get the ones you really want, and that's about it. It's weird. It works. I'm not complaining here. It's just quite bizarre.
But that said, I haven't seen a bad combo yet. Like, I was able to identify combos that would work. I don't know if there comes a time where somebody just inherently, because of what they've been dealt, gets an advantage over another player. I could see that being an issue.
Probably impossible to avoid completely, but there's so much complexity that I think I guess the magic of the game is trying to figure out how to make the most of what you have, which maybe doesn't sound fun, but we like that kind of thing.
I love that. I have not played the expansion yet. I do have it. I'm not sure how it's going to affect the balance of the card combos that come out. So you're adding cards to that base set. Don't know what that's going to do.
But that other than increase the replayability, as long as it works.
Hopefully, yes. It was marked expansion number 1, so it's pretty obvious that they're planning on more.
I see potential for it.
Oh, absolutely. More artifacts, different card types.
Have you opened expansion 1
yet?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I've
how many
opened it.
cards are in there?
I think it was something like 10 artifacts, a couple of mages, another place of power. There's also one-use powers that are like spells or scrolls.
So new mechanic, at least. Okay.
It's a new mechanic. You get this one-time ability that you get to spend when you most need it, and it adds a 5th player, which is something that I've noticed a lot of games doing lately. And it's not just lately, because Orleans did that way back in the day. They added a 5th player expansion. But you look at a game like Quacks of Quedlinburg, you have that expansion that adds a few new mechanics and adds a few more components to the game, but it also adds your 5th player. So I think the thought behind that is make the base game cheaper, make it more accessible to people. So instead of having to charge $60 on the shelf, you charge 50 or 45, and then put the expansion out. If people really like it, then they can go ahead and buy it.
I think that's a good way to go about things.
Here's what I really liked about the way that they did this one, though, and the fact that they knew that this was coming out because the box was designed in a specific way to accommodate the new cards, the new scrolls, the new components. So it had the space, it had the slots for them, and they told you exactly how to put it in.
So I see two sides to this argument. When you're playing a game and you know that they're planning the expansion because they've got the extra space, or worse yet, they've got like references to those mechanics on the game components or something, right? You feel like you're cheated because you didn't get that feature. But on the other hand, if to add that feature, it adds $10, $20 to the base price of the game, and it turns out you don't like the game, I don't know. It's a tough one. I see that the perception is that I'm feeling cheated, but in reality, I don't think they're being cheap. I think they're by and large doing me a favor, give me the chance to decide if I like it. If I want that fifth player, I must like the game. And also, if I like the game, I must want the expansion. So therefore, I'm going to get it.
I can definitely see both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
And I've
now,
heard
unless
both.
my gaming group is always 5 people or something.
But I don't know how many gaming groups actually fall within that category where they have to say, oh, well, I have to wait until the expansion comes out because this only supports 4.
Yeah, I can't see that being a consistent problem.
Yeah.
I would imagine even if you've got a group of 5 dedicated players, every now and then one person is busy. So I think it's a good thing. I think the perception is there that I'm being cheated. They got to price them competitively too. So I can't believe that they're selling out on you.
I agree more with the way that this is being done from the standpoint of I want to get the game into players' hands. You can get a copy of this game pretty easily for about $30, and you get the expansion for like 10 to 12.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
If you want more content, instead of having to go in and shell out like, $50, an additional learning curve, because now all those expansion components are already included in your base game. So either you have to explain that learning curve away, or you have to basically say, this is expansion content, you can leave it in or take it out, however you want to do it. So I would rather get in the door cheaper and see if I like a game first before having all that expansion content.
And I think I completely agree with that too. I think I've had that perception early on. I remember way back with Catan when I picked that up, and I'm like, well, they should just have the 5 and 6 player in here to begin with. No. I disagree with that now. Let me test out a game for way cheaper. If it adds extra components, then I'll pay that price when I decide I want it. I think that's a great way to build games. More modular. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
The one last point that I want to talk about with this game is that as a teacher, you need to be cognizant of not steamrolling your new players. And this is something that's very easy to do in this game.
Yes, it was apparently. Because you just rolled right over me.
And I was trying something new. So I was like, it's my normal teaching strategy of I'm going to try something completely different from what I did to begin with and see what the results are. Unfortunately, that leads to sometimes you do better than your original playthrough, and you're like, oh, okay, this really works, and your new players wind up feeling like they got rolled over.
At least you tried, to not annihilate me. I will say, definitely being my first play, though, I know I did not play optimally. I wasn't quite sure of what my, resource building engine was from the get-go, and I might have kind of changed it up a couple times. And again, it was only like 5, maybe 6 rounds, so every round I was not prepared as a round lost. Yeah. So I'm not surprised I lost, but you're right. It's quite easy to just roll right over me. Now, I will say, though, I think if things went just slightly different, had I had a little bit more resource or something, I think I could have tipped the scales on you with that one card that would have gave me 3 bonus points for some specific thing. I don't recall. But so, yeah, then again, I had a chance.
That's the thing. This game is about inches. It's about those little tiny shortcuts that you're going to take. How can I optimize this turn? I have to optimize my engine and try not to collect resources, but to collect points as much as possible.
That said, I loved it. It was satisfying. I wanted to play again. I'm sure we were out of time or who knows what. I definitely wanted to play more of that.
As I said a few episodes ago, I wasn't really sold at first about needing it in my collection, especially if there's a BGA adaptation to it. But the more that I play it, the more that I'm really glad that I picked it up. It's really growing on me, and I really can't wait to play it at a higher player count and in person.
It feels good.
It does.
Play.
It just does. It's just
satisfying.
very, very, very satisfying. So it's not going anywhere for a long time. This thing is staying on my shelf. And that was Res Arcana. Well, don't go away, because coming up next, we have an interview with the team that is responsible for the Doomlings Kickstarter. Stay tuned. On today's show, we have a couple of very special guests. We have Justice Meyer, Eric McCoy, and Chris Svela from the card game Doomlings, now up on Kickstarter. Justice is the primary creator of the game, Eric is the campaign manager and a developer on the game, and Chris is also a developer of the game. I'd like to welcome you all to the show.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
This is great.
Oh, not a problem. So tell the people who don't know about Doomlings out there in the audience what the game's about, what the concept is, how you play.
Doomlings is a 2 to 6 player card game. It's a delightful card game for the end of the world.
You sound really delighted.
The idea is that you are playing through different ages are rounds that you play through, and you have traits in your hand that you're playing for points. So traits like overgrowth, just simple traits like teeth, you're playing those for points. Each round has different rules that you have to abide by. There are a lot of fun effects that really change up the gameplay as you're going through it.
And the object of the game is simply to score the most points by the time the world ends.
That's right.
And so hidden in those ages are these catastrophes. And basically, where ages have generally positive rules on the game, catastrophes have adverse effects on the game. And so they may require you to discard a card, and so your hand will shrink. But after 3 catastrophes, the world ends, and that's when players tally up their score, and the player with the most points gets to have the most points at the apocalypse.
That's right.
Well, I think that's what we're all trying to do, is really score the most points by the time that the world ends.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the goal.
That's it.
Get one last comeuppance on our neighbor.
Exactly. Lots of take that elements from what I saw as well.
Yeah, we like to get a little bit of that in there. There is a surprising amount of player interaction that we come up with. But the point for us is not to emphasize, like, it's never that mean. It never hurts that much. We still want people to be enjoying themselves, having a good time. This isn't a time for people to feel like they have to go out and, take revenge on their opponents.
It's much less of that kind of like harsh trading card battle and much more of like a mischief kind of a game. It's a little bit cheekier.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even when you're taking from other players, it's still fun. I mean, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun.
It's a good way to start the end of the world.
Can you guys tell us a little bit of the background about how the idea for this game came about?
Yeah, so this is Justice. In 2019, over Christmas, my brother Andrew, who is my co-creator on this, he and I were playing card games with our cousins, and Andrew and I are avid gamers. Andrew in particular always has the weirdest kind of niche board games to bring. But it can be difficult to play some of those games with more meat on them with our family. Now, the flip side is when you're around for the holidays, that's who you want to be spending time with. You want to have a good group of friends, a good group of family. And you don't want to be overthinking your gameplay. You want to be able to drink a glass of wine and just enjoy it. So we thought, wouldn't it be fun if he and I, as brothers, just had a project to work on? So we just took out our notebooks, started coming up with ideas. Personally, I have a lot of existential dread. So I immediately said, let's make a game for the end of the world. I love the idea of, playing traits, and then maybe these disasters happen, and at some point the world is destroyed and everyone is just kind of gone, but we've all scored these points and feel really good about it. And Andrew was sort of there, he's our rules lawyer, was there to say, okay, so you want a thing to happen, but when that thing happens, another thing happens. So Andrew was able to kind of take my crazy thematic ideas and distill them into more functional gameplay. But just to kind of, sum this up, it really did just begin as like a little passion project for my brother and I to work on. And then just 2-3 months later, I think the pandemic hit. Eric and I are commercial directors. Our industry really got hit hard, and suddenly we were without work. We took to other passion projects, but we had this big hole to fill. And I was sort of thankful that I had this game to work on with my brother, and then my friend Chris Phalo, who's with us right now, immediately took interest in the game. Between Eric and Chris and my brother and I, we kind of found ourselves in this neat little spot to just work on a passion project that I don't think we really at the time realized was going to become a Kickstarter.
No, definitely not.
I'm pretty sure it was going to be like a napkin idea that these, two, Justice and Andrew, were just going to keep at their house and play once a year and never share with us.
Yeah. So I thought I'll entertain Justice for a bit and play test this game online with him.
He'll grow out of this.
Yeah, he'll move on. One of the big reasons why I joined was because Justice and Eric are both really talented commercial directors. That's something else that they've done. They do a lot of music videos, a lot of short films and stuff like that. I always want to work with these guys, and I'm always like, hey, like I do some acting, like put me in a commercial. And they're like, okay. And then, so when Justice finally opened the door and said, work with me on something,
I have a project for you.
I'm in. It sounds so fun.
Gosh. And I'm here just because I like card games.
Well, certainly the Kickstarter has been a huge success, and we'll get into that in a minute. So what tiers are you offering for this Kickstarter for the game?
A huge success is like an understatement. This came as like a stunning poop your pants shock. We talked, we like the night before we like circled up and we were like, all right, like emotionally this could go one of three ways. People could like the game, people could not like the game, or people could be indifferent, right? It's kind of, prepare for people to be like, wow, good job, guys. People could be like, hey, I don't know if this is ready yet. And then people could be like, Doomlings, okay. Right? You're kind of like in the middle. We didn't expect to hit our goal in 49 minutes.
49.
Yeah. Like, you'd have to be a psychopath to prepare for that. Like, that never crosses your mind. Where we're at now is like, so we just crossed, I think it was 3,000 backers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we thought, after we hit our goal, sorry, I've just been reminded, it's almost 3,500 backers. It's insane. We thought maybe it'd be nice to have a couple thousand people want our game after, all was said and done with the Kickstarter. We're on like day 12. This is crazy. Yeah. This is not, this defies the physics. Anyway, to get back to your question, what are the tiers we're offering? So we have the classic game, which is everything you need to play Doomlings, right? It's all in one box. It's all compact. It's every trait. It's about 140, 150 cards.
Yeah.
They're all unique cards, which is one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of our competitors. So there's no duplicates. There's no filler cards. Every card is uniquely drawn by Justice. We also have several expansions that we started to add to increase the size of the game. So when you look at the black box, that includes a couple of expansions like Dinolings,
Mythlings, dual color cards. And this is expanding the content players have to play with.
Yeah. It just builds on the game itself. And then when you get to the gold bundle, which is kind of the largest one, that's actually about 240 plus unique cards and a playmat that we're including in the same bundle as well. So we really try to pack as much as we could in each of the tiers on the Kickstarter.
Well, that's really awesome. I mean, it sounds like you guys have, made some different tiers for different backer levels, people who just want to kind of dip their toes in, but still get a very full experience will still definitely get that at the lower tier. And then people who just want to go full bore and that big amount of FOMO like I usually have back in Kickstarters, can have like a super deluxe experience at the top level.
So the way we kind of think about it is, you described it perfectly. The base game, the classic edition, that is for someone who just wants to dip their toes in and they want a game to play. The black box includes our most popular expansions, so like Dinolings, it's a huge hit. People they love dinosaurs. And then when you start getting into the gold tier, that's where we start to add expansions that do like advanced mechanics with the game. So like Techlings introduces like attachments. And then there's what we call the meaning of life expansion. And that's where every player gets a hidden agenda. And so you've got this like secret mission that you're doing. And if you hit that goal, then you get a bonus points at the end of the game. So it kind of is a little tweak on the game that you've already, come to learn.
You've definitely had a huge amount of success with this, and you touched on that a little bit already. This has been your first creation using Kickstarter. So I have on my show notes, how has the experience been overall? I'm pretty sure you guys are fairly happy with it from the sounds of it, with the success that you've had.
We kind of covered like how surprised we are. I think what's been really nice to see is it's not just clearing the goal, it's seeing people come out to talk about the things that get them excited about the game, seeing the questions that they're asking and hearing the things that they really pick up on, because that shows us that we're not just making another product for people to buy. It kind of feels like we're making these little connections with people all over the world.
One of the fun things for all of us too is when we were developing this card game, like we were just trying to make something that was fun for us to play,
That we would enjoy.
Yeah.
That we would enjoy playing with our families. What one thing we didn't really like set out to like make this game for a specific demographic or anything. So one of the fun things through this process is seeing that it's popular with kids. Like we're learning about kids as young as 8 or 10 years old who are enjoying playing the game. But not only that, they're crushing it when they're playing it, and they're the way that they can explain the game.
We had a reviewer
whose daughter was able to repeat these game concepts back, and I remember like getting like really teared up at that because it was not.
That was pretty cool.
It was really cool. It was not something
real.
that.
But we also engage with gamers, and I think the hard thing about making a game for a broad audience is that most people are not walking around looking for a Kickstarter project. They're not looking for a niche game. The audience that's going to first come out and support us are going to be people who actually like playing board games. And so those are the people we knew we had to convince from day one. We sent out 70 prototypes. Admittedly, like we used our unemployment checks on these things. But it was important that we get it into the hands of people who play games. And we didn't try to convince them that we were setting out to make something like Gloomhaven or something jam-packed with the craziest new mechanics they've ever seen. We wanted them to know, hey, this is supposed to be a game that has enough meat on the bones that you're going to keep coming back and playing. But when you just need a breather, when you're sitting in line at a convention, when you got family who doesn't want to open up and learn rules for an hour, we're going to give you something that you're going to love pulling from your shelf and just knocking 20 minutes or 30 minutes out with the people you care about. That's kind of what we've seen here. And I think in convincing them, we've opened the door for now more casual players to take notice of us.
And I think you guys make a really good point there. I know through my journey in gaming, I started off actually relatively heavy and kind of got heavier. And then I've started to taper off a little bit back to try to introduce some people to the hobby. Whether it's family, friends, colleagues, people don't want to get into a super heavy rule set right away. Kind of one of my experiences was going on a cruise ship with my family and friends. And so it was my best friend from college, my family, his family. They are definitely not gamers, but we pulled out a couple of games that were very easy, very light, and they wound up getting those. And also they've started getting heavier and heavier games. So having something that's a good entry weight game might seem, like, okay, as a gamer, I might not want to play this all the time, but I can get more people into the hobby and still enjoy myself. And I think those games serve a huge place in the market.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because, again, when I think back to the type of player I am and the type of games that I like to play, there does need to be a place for me to share this with, for example, my mom. There are a lot of games that I love that I wish I could just turn to her and be like, Mom, oh my God, I wish you would have just seen this thing I just did. And she's like, okay. but when you're sitting there and playing with, your nephew and your uncle, and I'm speaking for myself, right? But but also a friend of mine or my brother who does want a more engaging game experience. That's a really fine line to walk, but that is what we've spent the past year working our butts off to really try to do, because at the end of the day, Doomlings is a game about life and existence, the time we have in this world, and I don't think there's anything more important than spending it with a wide range of people we care about.
Well, that is certainly one of the reasons that I know I started tabletop gaming was to connect with more people. Getting back to the Kickstarter, are there any other lessons learned that you guys have? I know it's only 12 days into the campaign so far, but through your experiences, any lessons learned that you want to share with people that are thinking about going on the platform for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I would not call us, experts worthy of giving advice by any stretch of the imagination. This is our first Kickstarter, so what works for us may work differently for other people. But, I think the first thing for us was we wanted to bring aboard a team that could help us not just with social media, right? We brought on a social media team of 3 people that we interviewed. We actually brought them from forums on Board Game Geek. And it was important to us that we bring along gamers who could do social media as opposed to social media people who would do gaming. And so in having kind of that core, and this core is Christine Petrovich, James Freeman, Patrick Jones. In having that core, they've guided us because a lot of them have backed 10, 30. James he's a super backer, and he's done like
backer. He's our backer number 1. I don't know how he pulled that off.
Yeah, he was like, but they've been around the block and they've seen successful Kickstarters and they've seen Kickstarters make mistakes, and so they've helped us kind of navigate the waters.
And importantly, they know what it's like to back a game. They know what passes the smell test. They know when someone's just out talking about themselves and doesn't actually give a crap about the other person on the other end. We knew that in working with them, we could make our campaign not so much about just putting Doomlings in front of everyone's face, but instead building a community of other passionate gamers where we could get feedback, we could get comments. We have now an advisory board, right? Those 3 know what the hell they're talking about. So when they speak up and they say to us, hey, I think you might want to consider this, or I'm noticing a lot of feedback on your game around this area. Now we get to listen because they can help facilitate, what our audience actually wants from our game.
A really great case in point, we had a lot of gold box backers. First of all, we thought that the most popular box was going to be the classic box. And not even close, 57% of our audience wants that gold box bundle, which shocked us. But of that group, there's a small subset that want the content from the gold box, but they want it in a black box. And in the barrage of all the comments and all the emails and all that stuff, it could have gone overlooked. And they were able to bring that to our attention and say, hey, this would be a great win. No one's going anywhere. No one's threatening to unback you or whatever. But this would be an added thing we could bring to the community if you guys could figure out how to make box swapping possible.
And sorry, I was just going to say, there's no person in our comments section on Kickstarter or Facebook or Instagram, nobody is going unnoticed. And I just wanted to say that's the social team and backer support. They're just knocking it out of the park in that regard.
We want to make sure that everybody feels like they are part of a insanely fast growing family, but a family nonetheless.
And a family that cares about what their thoughts and opinions and feedback is.
Yeah, we may not be, there are some things that just aren't possible, right? But we are going to look into everything. And I think that's a thing that we want to maintain. However this scales over the next 18, we want it to remain this listening experience on our part, because all of these backers have more experience at Kickstarter than we do.
It sounds like you guys are definitely staying engaged with your community and interacting with them. Can you guys describe your playtesting experience during the pandemic and how you were able to get people to playtest this game?
Justice found a website called GameStructure.com that allows you to upload all the necessary files that you need. It was really helpful for us to have that resource in order to playtest, because we were playtesting with Andrew, Justice's brother, who lives across in Iowa. And we were playing with different people in different states. So it was absolutely essential for us to be able to connect that way.
And I should interject here, what's very unique about GameStructure, it's a Patreon creator who did it. And so it's not like you're dealing with a big company and you're trying to work within their system. For the price of basically a coffee cup donation, we could get them to reprogram the platform for us so we could continue testing.
We were working with another independent artist who was just working on something they were passionate about. And so they would even listen to us for our feedback for things we wanted to test for our game to try and get those features in.
It let us see what the art on the card looked like during play. Functionally, it let us do everything that we needed to be able to do, whether it was digging through discard piles or shuffling through draw decks or just anything like that. Eventually, we were able to, move on and do a test print of all the cards. And within our bubbles, because we want to make sure that we're being safe and responsible during all this, we were able to, actually test it in person, which is a whole other experience, simply with the game, and ultimately like what the end product of the game is going to be.
What's important to note, the pandemic is that challenge. So we had to start off online to play with strangers. Playing online, as Chris is alluding to, is not the same as playing with cards in hand. Now, thankfully, my brother and I had the sense at the beginning to say, hey, making this game, we're going to do a card game. We're not going to do components. That was always interesting to us because it seems much more tangible and executable. But for playtesting, it meant we could get affordable prototypes. Now, that's expensive when you don't have a job. But when you care about the game, you just need it in people's hands. So we were able to pass it around to our team, to our friends, send it all over the world, and then start mining for information across 4 rounds of prototypes until that 4th round that ultimately got sent to reviewers.
It should also be noted that Justice's brother Andrew has a very special mind, and he's able to play the game with any number of players around the table, and he is playing all of their hands
all the time.
Mm-hmm. And he plays it hundreds of times a month. And so he's just wired that way. So, we got lucky in that the pandemic didn't actually slow us down in that regard, because we could just run Andrew's brain simulator and it was the same thing.
We just had to adapt.
Do you guys have a rough count of how many playtests went on before you sent it to reviewers?
No, because the problem is it's just like it was our team, and we just all had to have an agreement that we were going to be like,
we were in a bubble. That's what was going to happen.
Yeah, we were all in our own bubbles, and we were taking them to our own groups, and we were
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
There's no way to keep track of it. And so we just had to turn to our spreadsheets on Google Docs and keep checking in with each other. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I think, that, turning over every stone. And, in a different world, that's the silver lining of a pandemic. In a different world where we do have full-time jobs that we have to maintain, you don't have that kind of time or energy.
Or silence to think. You get a couple conventions maybe, right? And then you try to gather as much information as you can. But we were able to kind of think about the balance of the cards.
It's a lot of variety that's packed in the box, but you say that it's very easy to learn. How did you achieve that balance?
So just time. And it's being open to everyone's feedback. There's never a moment where we're disagreeing with someone's confusion. We're never pushing back on that. If someone calls us and is like, hey, I love this game, but I wasn't quite sure what this language meant. That's fair game. I don't care if it's been understood 1,000 other times. Well, let's go back to the spreadsheet. Let's see what's going on here. It doesn't mean we change it every time, but it does mean we listen. And, as far as the accessibility of it, we are working with concepts that were inspired by trading card games. I'm a huge, we're all Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone fans. But the problem with trading card games is you spend hours building decks and learning language like trample and divine shield and like just stuff you got to memorize. And you can't get my mom to play that kind of game. You know, you need to say and play in English. We're discarding a card. And it's that simple. So there is an elegance in simplifying language and communicating clearly. Clearly, I don't have that elegance. I have no brevity. I'm just talking here. But when it comes to the card, I don't think I've ever stared at anything as long as I have when I'm with Chris and Eric and Andrew, just looking at every little word and asking ourselves, how else could someone interpret this?
Yeah, like should there be a comma here? Should we say card or should we say trait? It's heavy on language.
The other thing I think that helps us build the complexity without overwhelming people with vocabulary is the structure of the game. Because we are randomizing the ages, you're going to play 9 to 13 rounds, but we're providing you with something like 25 ages to pull from. Because they're randomized, we're sort of creating a foundation that has flexibility and depth. So by design, this game will never be the same twice because of the randomization of the rounds, because of the fact that you never know when a catastrophe is coming. Added to that, there are no duplicate cards, and you have a very deep game without being a dense game.
Right. Replayability is really important to us. You know, we don't want this to be a game that people play once and it sits on their shelf for a year. Like, we want people to come back to it, find new things that they love about it, like make a point of showing their friends and family like a thing that they love about it.
Now, Justice, one of my favorite things from the Kickstarter page is learning that you actually taught yourself to draw during the process of designing the game.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
that is so inconceivable to me because I mean I can draw stick figures. That's about it.
Yeah.
I'm just so incredibly impressed. Can you take us through that process of learning how to draw, how you did it, what spurred that on?
To be clear, I still can only draw stick figures, but I'm going to explain. You know, as an artist, we're all artists. We're all creative. People are creative, even the people who say they aren't. And in art, you know, there are two things that I think are important. One is consistency. You can get away with just about anything as long as you're consistent. And two is understanding your medium. Actually, there's a lot more than that that's important. But let's just keep
part of his
that.
book.
But the medium is important. So from the beginning, when we were working on this game and we were really excited, there came a time where we realized, oh my gosh, we're going to need art, because you just need art that informs the player's experience. And without it, we can't tell this rich stories about these little creatures on a doomed and distant planet. You need that. It's integral to any player experience. But the second thing is we didn't have the money to hire an artist. We barely had the money to get prototypes by the time it came. So it was born out of a combination of necessity, but also the ignorance that we didn't really think this was going to be a thing. You know, there was no pressure for it. It was just a game that we were all going to have on our shelf. So in my mind, I was like, who cares if the art's crappy? You know, at least it's done. But, you know, I started getting excited about it. I had never really used Illustrator before. I've used Photoshop, but Illustrator was the program for the vector art. You know, and just through YouTube and research, looking for inspiration and finding what kind of work is out there, I found a look that inspired me. And I thought, well, I can create that. You know, I can't do something photorealistic. I don't have the hand-eye coordination to move a pencil the way it needs to, but I can spend countless hours staring at a screen and clicking points and pushing those around until I accidentally get a good-looking mountain. What I learned from this experience was the way an illustrator, like someone who sketches, trains over time that muscle memory, you know, and learns shape and form and understands lighting in a way that they can recreate that without thinking about it. It's almost second nature because they've done it so much. It's not really any different with Illustrator. I am a hotkey fiend. My first images as I'm drawing, even to this day, as I'm creating a new card, just look like nothing. They look stupid because but I'm just so at this point fat with my knowledge of the tool that I can definitely push things around until I luck my way into a beautiful image. So.
I want to go on record and say that there's a lot of talent involved as well. Justice is notorious for underselling himself. You know, he's got a great eye for color contrast, for composition. I mean, it's one thing, and we direct commercials together, but it's on one thing he's always pushing for. And so to me, it makes perfect sense that this translated over into illustrated cards. I was going through one of the files the other day to send an image to somebody, and it occurred to me that he made a mushroom cloud out of circles. and you just got to look really, really closely at the nuclear winter card, and you'll see it. But it's there. There's definitely talent at work.
Once the art started appearing on the cards, I mean, that's the moment I knew that, this was going to be, at the bare minimum, something really fun to work on. And at best, something really special.
I think one of the other things from the art that I especially appreciate is kind of the juxtaposition of the theme of just being doomed and trying to hurriedly score a whole bunch of points, and just this super cute artwork that gets kind of mashed with it. I think that's awesome.
So I just want to note, I have always been a fan of folk music because folk music can have these like playful songs and then like really dark and terrifying lyrics. Like Clementine is scary as heck. I tend to be the like angsty one of the group. And so even though my natural inclination was to draw these like little creatures, Chris and Eric are always reminding me, like, I'll start taking it dark. Like, wait, hold on now, hold on.
It's fun.
It's fun. The end of the world. It's not so bad.
It's a delightful card game.
I was like, what if it's a disastrous card game? It's delightful.
Yeah, one of the things early on with the cards, all of the trade cards have flavor text on them at the top. And at the start of it, there was a mix of, really funny quotes or just fun spins on like definitions of what that trait is. And one of my first notes to Justice was like, these should all be funny. They should all be funny because in addition to people having a fun time playing the game, I also want them, when it's not their turn, when they're looking at what card am I going to play, like when it's my turn again, I also want them like looking and finding these like funny quotes or just funny details to notice while they're on standby.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like to say that like the mantra of the game is it's the end of the world and I feel fine.
Yeah.
One other question that I have to ask you guys, what games other than Doomlings are on your gaming tables right now?
Well, so as far as family goes, I should start there, and everyone should know what we were playing when we first started. Sushi Go and Guillotine were excellent ways to start this game off because those were quick, rapid fire, and you're scoring points in some form or another. But that can also demonstrate anyone who's played Sushi Go or Guillotine. I think you'll understand what I mean when I say, hey, those are really accessible. You teach someone that in 5 minutes, you're going to have a good time. You can get anyone to the table. But if you play games, how many times are you really going to play that? But I think one of my personal all-time favorites, I can't ever get people to play this with me, and personally I understand why, but is King of Tokyo. And King of Tokyo has an element to it that I would never presume to say Doomlings has, but there's something that really excites me about it. You have these different characters that you're playing with, and it feels like every person is doing something just a little different than what they're familiar with, if that makes sense. And Doomlings is that kind of same idea. They're just like these twists on familiar mechanics.
Every Sunday we round the team up, and we actually just got done doing this. We do a live stream where we all play a game on Board Game Arena, and we just stream it for our Facebook group. And we'll play games like Ink and Gold. We actually just played Carcassonne. We'll play Sushi Go, obviously.
For sale.
Just some quick ones that we can showcase to the world.
Yeah, but it's like games where you build a little tension so that when something happens, like you're like, yeah! It's just, that's kind of what we go for. And you can see the range of like where like a game like Sushi Go is nice, but you can only play 1 or 2 rounds, right? But like Ink and Gold, we can sink our teeth into that for, 45 minutes to an hour.
Turn your brain off and just
keep clicking. Yeah.
Now, I got to answer for my brother because I think this is hilarious. The one game that he always wants to play is Agricola, because he's amazing at Agricola, and the one game that no one will ever play with him is Agricola, because he's amazing at Agricola.
I love this game. I don't know if anybody here has heard of it, but Texas Hold'em. That is one of my favorite card games.
I will give a plug to, there is a fun game that I wish I could get more people to play. It's called Power Grid. It takes a little while to play. It is a board game, but it's basically all strategy. And you are trying to dominate the power market in various countries. And it's all about infrastructure.
Who was it that said you're not playing Power Grid right unless you're using an Excel spreadsheet?
It's a great game. Love Power Grid. Shout out to Power Grid.
I actually have a very short Power Grid story myself. I had a friend that set me up with my girlfriend, and we were having a board gaming night. The premise to get me over there was, oh yeah, we'll just play some games, have a good time. It'll be a big party, probably 15, 20 people. So a lot of different games going on, a lot of different groups and that. And she was there at the party playing a separate game and trying to kind of get my attention and bump into me a little bit. I didn't notice her at all.
Arwen, you were zoned in on the Power Grid. Yeah.
She got so mad that I was not paying attention to her whatsoever. And she brings this up on a fairly regular basis. I would say probably every 2 to 3 months. The first time that we met was at this party. They brought me back to have more of a dinner and, more intimate game night where I met her and, we kind of hit things off, and we've been together for the past almost 3 years at this point. But she will say, you didn't notice me that night. And I basically said, well, I was playing Power Grid.
I totally understand that. That is one of those games where nothing else matters. When I was in high school, I had a mentor who was a senior when I was a freshman. We both ended up discovering that we were living in LA, a decade later. This individual came over to my house once. We caught up. We played Power Grid, and I won. And he was a sore loser, and I haven't heard from my mentor ever since. And this is the truth. And he knows who he is. And when he's ready to say, you know what, Power Grid doesn't matter, Eric, I'm sorry, he is welcome back at my house.
One thing that I found interesting is you guys have done some film work together, kind of getting off of the board game subject. How did that start with you guys kind of working together?
Well, how much time do you got? No, Justice and I were both living out in LA, and both of us were working for production companies that it was just grueling. It was a tough environment, and we did not enjoy our jobs. And the short version is we quit our jobs together and started entering commercial contests. And we started winning commercial contests. And that was how we paid the rent, was finding small little contests. And we'd rally our friends and we would enter the contest. And if we won, then we had rent for that month.
I mean, we did this card game with a similar mentality. At the time when we were doing the contest, we were paying our rent, but like that, we were also living off of ramen noodles, but so most of our money was going back into the commercial because there were occasionally these opportunities to work with like 7-Up or Lego, and those kinds of names when you're a young filmmaker are really big on your portfolio. So even though the budgets for, anyone who knows filmmaking, the budgets were not very good at all, we kind of recognized the more we put back into the work, the more we would pave kind of success down the line so we could build up our portfolio. And I know we're talking about film, but just to tie it into the card game, I think that was our same theory here was, don't make the Kickstarter to make money, make the Kickstarter to make an awesome game. That's how we did our film career.
It applies to the materials we're using in the actual like cards for Doomlings, right?
Sending out prototypes and hiring, board gamers to work with.
We are risks. But the goal is not, a get rich quick scheme on Kickstarter. The goal is to establish a very stable game that is reputable.
Like people are excited about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think, as it relates to the film, one thing we learned very quickly was the best environment is a collaborative one. And so if you learn early on how to take feedback, how to open yourself up, how to be vulnerable, how to say, you know what, we could have done better on that one. We should, we could have found a better way. You know what, that was actually a better idea, right? And we're testing the ideas at every stage of the process. That's how we were able to accelerate our timeline on Doomlings, was we had the practice of assembling, the best ideas and putting them into, a cohesive theme and really, I think, gleaning from everybody.
Well, I certainly think that is a great way to end this conversation and wrap this up, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss?
Obviously, we've got our Kickstarter. It is live right now. We are going to be, because we blew through all our stretch goals in the first 10 days. So we are announcing a new set of stretch goals on Tuesday. So that's top of the mind right now. And that's going to, I don't want to give anything away, but we announced, actually, I can give this away. Every backer's game will receive one random holofoil dominant trait. These holofoils that are going to be randomized, it's kind of like a collector's item. It's in addition to the game itself. And so tomorrow we're actually releasing a table that will show the rarities of each of these cards in terms of how few of them are going to be printed. And that's within the Kickstarter print, because beyond Kickstarter, they'll never be printed again. So that's something we're really excited about as well. But these are, Kickstarter exclusive holofoils that we're making. The other thing we're going to be doing is on Wednesday, we're going to be launching a contest. And so basically we have this thing called the Captain's Log. And so every day on our Instagram channel, we have a new audio dispatch from Captain Mary Sienna, who is exploring the fictional world of the Doomlings. It's called Enderis. And so she sends her dispatch back. That's going to be going every single day of the campaign. And within this dispatch, I think I can give this away, there is a hidden hint as to who the captain's favorite Doomling is. So we're giving you a sneak peek. Actually, you're not airing this until afterwards. This is totally fine that I say it. But on Wednesday, we're going to be announcing that there's a contest. And so people can dig through all of the clues to try to figure out who her favorite Doomling is. And then that winner will get a bonus gold box edition of the game.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. That is so cool that you guys are running something like that and kind of, like you said, building that community up and trying to get people kind of engaged with the campaign.
Yeah. I think, from our perspective, like, we love these little Easter egg hunts. And so that seemed like a really natural way to kind of leverage the fact that we have right now almost 3,500 people to have an Easter egg hunt with. Like, when's the next time that's going to happen? So, we figured, let's do it and let's see if, I'm sure they're all smarter than we are and they're going to figure it out no problem, because they just blew through our stretch goals in 10 days. But nonetheless, it's an opportunity to have some fun. And that's also kind of what we're here for.
Well, again, thank you guys so much for being on the show today. And make sure to check out Doomlings on Kickstarter. It's up right now, going to be up for the next few days. So go over there, check it out, see if it's something for you, and make sure to back. Again, guys, thank you so much. And hopefully we have you on the program again.
That'd be wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Arwen.
Thank you for having us.
It's been great.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Make sure to go and check out our Facebook page. Our Instagram and Twitter is at cardboard_time, and Justin's.
You can find me at jphomer98 on Instagram.
And check out our Board Game Geek podcast page. If you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas for discussion topics, please email cardboardtime@gmail.com. And as always, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again in another 2 weeks for another episode of Cardboard Time.
Later, folks.